Anyway, welcome everyone to our webinar, The Secrets of Travel Portrait Photographers. And just a couple words about us. I am Ugo Cei, for those who don't know me. I'm a photographer, travel photographer, workshop leader. I'm based in Italy, near Milan. And besides being a photographer, I also enjoy doing a little podcast that is called The Traveling Image Makers. We've been doing this for more than 100 episodes, and I invite you to check it out if you want to listen to interviews with travel photographers. You can find everything about me, all that I do, my photos, my blog, and so on at my website, www.ucphoto.me. My partner today, my good friend and business partner, Yong, who I would like to thank for being up so early in the morning. If I'm correct, is it, what's that, Robin, 6:30 a.m.?
6:30, yes, 6:30 at the moment.
6, you are in Canberra, Australia, right?
Yes, that's right, at the moment, yes.
Yeah, do you want maybe to introduce yourself to our audience here, just briefly?
Hello, everybody. I'm Yong. I'm a new travel photographer. Yes, I do about 18 trips a year. I'm currently in Australia. And then, of course, I'll be in Venice for the carnival from the 31st of January to the 14th of February next year. I will be in Venice every year. Okay.
And one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is because you're not just a travel photographer, but you're a specialist in portraits, in travel portraits. And we will see many of your photos, and we'll try to pick your brains to
no problem.
Grab some of the secrets.
Feel free to ask me any questions.
Good, that's why you're here. So a little bit about what we will be presenting today. This is our agenda, but I like to keep things informal and free-flowing, so don't expect me to follow it strictly. Before presenting the agenda, I would just like to say that this webinar is being recorded as I speak. So even if you have to leave early, you will be able to catch up with the recording later. You will receive an email with a link to the recording. We were promising that you would get our free ebook that we are putting at the finishing touches on. The ebook is again about travel portraiture, and it contains what is in this webinar and much more. We still have to finish the layout, so it might take a couple of days before you receive it, but don't worry, you will get an email with a link to download it soon. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about some definitions. What is a travel portrait? Sounds obvious, but there might be some discussions about it, so we want to be clear about what we mean by travel portrait. Of course, to make a portrait, you need a subject. You need somebody to stand in front of your camera. So how do you find subjects? How do you choose suitable subjects for travel portraits? This is about travel. So travel means going to foreign countries, typically, to other places, different cultures, different languages. So there is a kind of a cultural divide between the photographer and their subjects. What are the best tips and suggestions that we have for bridging this divide? Then photography, of course, is about the light, and getting the best light for portraits ensures that you take the best portraits. Now, of course, you are traveling, you don't have much, in many situations you don't have much control about light. You have to make do with what's available, with the location and the light that it's available. So we are going to teach you some tricks that we use to get the best light in all situations. Some little bit about composition, especially things to watch out for, mistakes to avoid when taking portraits, things that are important, especially when you're in the street, you see somebody interesting, you don't have much time, so you need to to know those rules by memory and apply them even without thinking, because you don't have much time. A bit about gesture then, which is an important part of portraits, we believe. And if we have time, I have one more topic that is not on this list because I had it at the last minute and I forgot to update the list here. That is about what we can do with the photos that we take of strangers in foreign countries. What are we allowed to do legally and I would say ethically with those photos? Okay, so a bit of a definition of a travel portrait. So on the surface, it appears to be easy, right? A travel portrait is basically a portrait of somebody that was taken while traveling. But we believe it is helpful to define this genre a bit more specifically, though, and explain what we consider to be a proper travel portrait, at least to the extent that we use this term in this webinar today. And travel portraiture is a subgenre of the widest genre of travel photography. So I'm going to use, just Googled, I will admit it. I Googled for definition of travel photography. I came upon a definition that is provided by the Photographic Society of America. And I'm just going to read it. It says, a photo travel image expresses the characteristic features of culture of a land as they are found naturally. There are no geographic limitations. Images from events or activities arranged specifically for photography or of subjects directed or hired for photography are not appropriate. Close-up pictures of people or objects must include features that provide information about the environment. So, with this definition, a travel portrait is a photo travel image, according to this definition, whose main subject is a person or a number of persons. I mean, the photo must be about the person or the person. It can be one, it can be two, a small group. I would not say that a photo of a crowd is a travel portrait. Crowd in a square during a rally or something like that is not a portrait. We also established, maybe a bit arbitrarily, that we call it a portrait if the subject is aware of being photographed and has agreed to being photographed, even if sometimes this agreement is not verbal. Sometimes you find somebody on the street, you don't speak the same language. Just the gesture, just pointing to the camera, raising it to your eye, and smiling. And if the person nods, you know that there is some kind of agreement. They have acknowledged your presence and they agree to be photographed. So this basically rules out a whole set of candid photos, or let's say quote unquote stolen photos, which make up part of what, for instance, street photography or reportage. Often the photographer does not want to interact with the subject, wants to capture some scene that is happening in the street without perturbing. This is all very fine, it's all genre photography, this is not what we are talking about here. We differ in one aspect from the definition used by the PSA. They don't want portraits that have been arranged, situations that have been set up specifically for photography. But that is more of not so much a definition as a rule that they establish for their contests. We do not follow the rule. We believe that travel photography is fine art photography, at least the way we practice it. Not everyone has to agree with that. But we believe that we will do everything that it takes to create a great photo. If it means arranging the shot, if it means paying people to pose for us, then we will do it. We might not be accepted to a contest held by the PSA, but that's not our aim. So with this in mind, keep this in mind because you will see photos that are obviously set up, staged, and arranged here. We still believe those are, you might disagree with this, but we still believe these are useful because the techniques we use to take those photos are the same techniques that we use to take photos that are not necessarily arranged. So there's a wide variety of photos here. Some are not just spontaneous that happen on the street. This is a trio of nice Thai girl that I met in Bangkok. And they were just willing to be photographed and smile for the camera. I didn't even have to ask. They were just naturally asking to be photographed even without speaking. So this was totally not arranged. And at the other extreme, we have something Robin was referring to Venice, to the Venice Carnival. Every year we go there. We have our own workshop there. We will maybe talk a little bit about this later. And much of what we do there is carefully staged and planned. So we will present some examples of that as well. Regardless, first thing to do a travel portrait, you need a subject. How do you choose your subject? So we have kind of a criteria here, or a set of criteria to decide whether a subject is worth of being photographed or not. So one is, we share that with PSA. They say that the subject should be characteristic of a culture or a land, and somehow revealing the place. So this is a photo by Robin. Maybe you want to explain the circumstances. Where was this taken? Who are those women?
I think this one's from Chiang Mai, Thailand. These are ladies from the Karen tribe. It's sort of a Miao tribe originating a few hundred years ago from China. And of course, these tribes ladies are pretty happy to be photographed. They get very, very few visitors, and this is what we took of them. Yeah. I think this, yeah, sorry.
Most people will not know that these are typical Karen. Is that how they call it, right? Karen?
Yes, yes.
Fashion, let's say so, way of
Yeah.
traditional costume and
Yes.
I mean, very, very interesting subjects, smiling for the camera, even if their teeth are not that great. There is a thin line here that is easy to cross. I mean, we look for interesting subjects. Sometimes those subjects are too much interesting. They might be outright bizarre. We try to avoid that. We try to show somebody who is natural, is not being purposefully bizarre. And of course, we will never, at least me personally, would never photograph and show the photograph of somebody who has obvious deformities or stuff like that. It doesn't feel right to me. But I don't think this image crosses that border, so to me it's fine as a quotient of interestingness and of relevance, of revealing the culture and the place that those people live in, come from. So these are our basic criteria. Sometimes, as we saw with my photo of the Bangkok schoolgirls, they just in places like Thailand, people are just so happy to be photographed that you don't even have to ask. Sometimes it's harder. In other places, it's harder. Sometimes you need to practice. I believe you need to practice. So how do you find subjects where you're not accustomed, where you're not used to photographing people, especially strangers in the street? I know for many people it's hard. I am naturally an introvert, and for a long time I thought it would be impossible for me to stop somebody on the street and ask to take their portrait. Then at some point I decided that if I wanted to travel and do travel photography, and photographing people, of course, is a big part of travel photography, I needed to break the ice, break this barrier. But you cannot do just saying, okay, tomorrow I will go to Cuba and photograph people there, or I will go to Morocco. You need to practice. You need to learn how to overcome your natural shyness and introversion. So I started photographing strangers in the street, just in my hometown initially, and then doing this everywhere. And I became more and more good at doing this and finding out that it's not that difficult. So I have some tips for you. The first thing that I realized you need to realize is that the worst thing that can happen to you when you go on the street and ask to take somebody's photo is that they say no. If you don't ask to take their photo, the best thing that can happen to you is that they say no. So you've got nothing to lose by just asking. And you will never get a portrait if you don't ask. And surprise, surprise, when I ask people on the street, can I please take your portrait? About 9 people out of 10 will just say yes. They might be wondering why, but they might ask why. But normally they will say yes, no problem. So that's the first thing you have to realize, that people are happy to be photographed, by and large. Then you need to set a goal for yourself. I mean, start today. Do not wait until tomorrow. And set a goal to photograph a stranger every day. Or one every week, depending on how you want to go about it. I think one every day is good. And I would set that goal for myself, and then I would go out. And then I would be shy and I would be scared and my hands were shaking. I would not dare asking somebody. But I knew I had to take one that day, so I stayed out until I got it. And so on. It was like my own homework to do that. You can start with street performance because they are happy to be photographed as long as you pay them. Smile and keep talking. That helps break the barriers, communication barriers. Have a story ready because those people sometimes will ask you, why do you want to take a photograph of me? And if you start saying, I don't know, then you might sound creepy. If you have a story, and the story can be true, it doesn't have to be a made-up story. You can say, I'm doing a project. I'm doing this to learn how to photograph people on the street. I do this to overcome my natural shyness. I'm doing a personal project. I'm creating a book, whatever. Any story will predispose your subject towards you. Show the photo on the back of the camera and then maybe ask for more photos and carry little business cards with your email address on them and give them out to people. If they want a copy of the photo, they might send you an email and you will just send them the photo that you've taken or the photos that you've taken. We found out that maybe roughly 1 in 3 persons will actually write back to you, and then it's fine. So these are my tips for starting out. A little trick of the trade here. When you ask to take a photo of somebody, they might be doing something, they might be walking on the street, and they will stop, and they will not know what to do. They will not know where to put their hands, and they will look awkward and stiff. So what do? You take a photo anyway, and then you show it to them. And even if they're not great, the pose is a bit stiff, then you tell them they look great anyway. You engage in small talk. They will, you might ask, where are you from? I like your hair, that's why I wanted to photograph you. And so they will loosen the attitude and start smiling and chatting. And then before leaving, you say, maybe we'll take one or more photos just to be sure. And then it is the moment that they are relaxed and they will look much better. So this is my little tip. This is just for taking photos of strangers that you meet in the street. I'm just hearing here Neil is saying that he can't hear sound. I'm just going to type in the chat. Yeah, I think other people can hear me, so there's one person who can't hear, but I don't know what to do about that. It's not, problem is not on our side, but Okay, good. Everybody else can hear us. So this is for very impromptu meetings on the street. Sometimes, as I said, we want to organize things a little better, and we have some situations where it's not that easy. You cannot easily find those people on the street. So, Robin, are you there with us?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
So, I
Yeah.
would like to tell a little bit of your story of, for instance, about your experience shooting in Kyoto, Japan. You have a fantastic, if I may say so, set of photos of the Geiko and Maiko, so these are
Yeah,
geishas
yes.
of Kyoto. Can you maybe explain the difference? Who are the Geiko, who are the Maiko, and how do you get to photograph them in their own environment? I hear it's not a that you can just jump on a plane, land in Kyoto, and just find those people in the street, right?
Yes. Okay. Now, basically, a geisha is, known as a geiko in Kyoto. So you can either call her a geisha or geiko. Now, they go through quite a lot of training before they become a geiko, and a maiko is a training geisha or geiko. Maikos are obviously quite young girls, sometimes as young as 15, 16 years old, and the training generally lasts for 5 or 6 years. The Michaels are more of a photographer's favorite because they have very interesting hairdo and kimonos which change every season according to the flowers. So maybe it's a cherry blossom in spring, hydrangea in the summer, Suzuki flowers in the autumn, and so on. Now again, these Michaels, there's not many of them around. I think in the whole of Kyoto, maybe less than 200. So they're difficult to find, and they got very, very tight schedules to keep. So very secretive people, very, very specialized people like that, it's very difficult to get them. Um, these are basically, very sought after people by photographers and tourists everywhere. Um, Most of the time, if you want to get photos like that, you need to book them in advance. And for my course, I'm talking about months in advance at least. And to even do the booking, you need to get good references from everybody. Otherwise, the tea house, these geckos or mycos work for tea houses. The tea house will not release them. They got very, very strict criteria to follow. That's in Japan. I mean, if you can't do a booking like that, the other thing is certain people will do their research. They would wait in the streets or wait at the downstairs of the place where the Michaels live. If you can find a place, some people stand guard there. I can tell you for sure 2 or 3 o'clock, the Michaels will come down and head to wherever it is. So certain photographers might wait there, but of course, the tea house might drive you away, that sort of thing. Or certain people will know that the Michaels and Geikos entertain at certain expensive restaurants in Kyoto every night. And so, they would probably wait about 1 or 2 a.m. when the geishas or Michaels or whatever come, finish off their, trying to exit the place, and they will try and photograph them. But for the last two scenarios, you will have to know that when you stop them in the streets, they will probably not stop for you. You probably get 10 or 20 seconds with the Michaels. So these private arrangements that I do, I mean, I'm in Kyoto again in December. It is again arranged shoots that I do for them every year, so they like the photos, and yeah. So micros are very, very different scenarios, I think,
So you
compared to models everywhere. Yeah.
cannot just go to Google and search for places
Well,
to photograph
you
geishas.
can.
You need a local contact. Mhm.
You can. I mean, there are certain activities for tourists, like you get a dinner together with the Michael, and probably there are 20 other people having a dinner together with you with that single Michael. So the chances of you photographing it will not be good. you don't get to choose the place. It's probably the same old restaurant. I've seen it before. And, you cannot disturb the other tourists. So sometimes you take a photo and there's another one or two tourists behind the micros, that sort of thing. Yeah. Again, I think some of the Japanese photographic associations, they do have planned photo sessions with the micros. But again, there's 10, 20 photographers per hour with the micros, and they have very strict rules like, okay, front row 5 photographers have to squat down, back row 5 photographers, and you can't change. And then, like every 10 minutes, you just move around. The micros and you can't tell them what to do. Even in my planned shoots, I just have a time with them. Um, but they are very, very professional. They will just post on their own, that sort of things. Or, when they're walking, in between tea sessions, you can photograph them. Yeah.
So this is similar to the situation also in Venice. I mean, you see those
It's
people in costumes that you can find them on the street. Of course, that doesn't mean that you will get great photos because there will be 100 people around. People might be walking to a place, and you will find tourists that want to take a selfie with them, and so on. So the chances of taking a good photo in the street are pretty slim. And, but you've been how long have you been going to Venice? How many years?
I think next year will be my 5th year. Yes, Venice. I think everybody that goes to Venice think that they can take a good picture with a model. These models, I mean the Venetian Mars models, but let's be very realistic about it. It's extremely difficult, as you say. Many photographers and tourists want to do the same thing. The streets are extremely crowded. Even if you speak to somebody and she agrees, basically, I think you have less than a minute for that. Now, the best ways that I do with some of the contacts or the models that I know, basically, they know where I stay. Sometimes, I already plan out before I do a Venice trip, like which locations and I want, and I go to those locations. Let's say today it's Burano, tomorrow maybe San Marcos, whatever. And we basically do it at a time where there is no people around, or we have very specialized shoots at certain locations. I think these are much more productive for us. We can control the situation, we can control the lighting, we can control the time, and I think it's more productive for everybody. Yeah, for the photographers, for the models, because I think the aim of it every day, at the end of the day, is to get very good pictures. Yeah.
So I see a question here by Greg. Hi, Greg.
Yeah.
He's asking if Robin is using Flash for those post-portrait, and I think I can answer for you that basically the answer is no, because you don't like using Flash.
99% of the time, it must be zero Flash.
Yeah, we're going to talk about light, natural light and artificial light soon, in a few minutes. So I guess that will answer all of your questions, in the next few slides. So, yeah, of course, in Venice, just a little pitch here. We are doing this workshop in beginning of February for the Carnival this year, and everybody is welcome to join us there. We will give more information about that at the end of the webinar. So again, this, like in Kyoto, there is a problem of a cultural divide. You need to get familiar, you need to get accustomed with the culture, with the language, with the customs, and so on. If you can, guys, you can keep asking questions in the chat. As I'm talking, I will not be able to answer them immediately, but I'm seeing them, and I will answer later. Okay. So, bridging the cultural divide. What I mean here. So, unfortunately, it's becoming harder to photograph people in developing countries. A growing number of places that people might get annoyed or even hostile when you try to take their pictures, or they ask for money. So many people ask the question, is it okay to pay money to take somebody's photo? So it looks like the right question to ask is not if it's okay to pay money. The right question is how did we got to the point where everybody is asking for money, or we is reacting. Not everybody, but many people are reacting in a non-friendly way. So I was reading the other day a blog post by a photographer, Matt Brandon, travel photographer, and he says the problem as he sees is that we are missing the travel experience. I venture to say there are too many photographers who visit a country or culture and never see it with their naked eye. They only view it through their camera lens. They don't stop and drink the tea or smoke the hookah. They don't bother to explore. They don't ask questions of their host. Heck, they don't even have a host. So, as a consequence of this situation this is due to let's face it, to the democratization of travel and of photography. Pretty much everybody now can go pretty much everywhere cheaply, and everybody has a camera in their pocket, just a phone. So photographers have become a little entitled to being able to take the photograph of anyone they meet, and their subjects, the host, might have become jaded. So the thing is that I'm waxing a little bit philosophical here and not practical, but I believe I agree with Matt Brandon that we should try to change the state of things. I mean, we cannot stem the tide, but we can try, at least for ourselves, to behave a little bit differently. So just a little bit of suggestion. So first of all, learn about your host, learn about the culture of the place you are going to visit. Understand that some people are happy to be photographed. Thailand or Indonesia, everybody loves to be photographed, at least until today. Others not so much. Places like Morocco, people are not very happy to be photographed. So you have to be respectful of that. You have to be respectful of customs and traditions. You don't go to a place of worship or near a place of worship in a traditional country dressed like you're going to the beach with shorts and flip-flops and tank tops. Be respectful of their customs. Learn some words of their language. And always remember that your hosts are not your models. They might have something to do. They might be going around doing their errands, the chores for the day, they're working. You cannot expect them to stop whatever they're doing and pose for you. So learn to understand when it's okay to ask them for a photograph, and build a rapport. Learn to know your host. Go to their homes. Invite them over for dinner and stuff like that. So, but still the question lingers. What about money in the end? Because that is sometimes a question that you might ask yourself. Is it okay to pay for portraits? Now, we believe that it is okay to pay adults to pose. As I said before, we do stage shoots. We organize them. We have models that sometimes they require pay. They want to be paid. It might be their job, or it might be their side job. They want to make some money on the side. So it's okay to pay them. Street performance, in particular, expect to be paid. You can think you're not paying for their photo. You're paying for the pleasure of listening to their music. If you meet a street performer, always pay them before taking a photo, not after. And one last thing, it is never okay to pay children to take their photographs. The reason is simple. Those children should be at school, should be with their families. If they find out that they can make money staying on the street instead of going to school, they will do it, and they will beg for money. They will become beggars instead of becoming students. So we believe it is never okay to pay children. All right, so yeah, there was a question here about lenses, and I'm going to read it because in the recording, people, I don't believe they will be able to see the chat. So it was a question about focal length used, and Robin is saying that is usually using a 100 millimeter focal length. And strangely enough, Robin, right, you don't own a camera. You always borrow one. You go
Ah, yes.
photography. But you also use a wide angle. It's great.
Yes,
I mean,
that is
I love
my
using a wide
secret
angle.
weapon. Sorry? You've seen it in Venice,
I
haven't
love,
you? Yeah.
yeah, I love using a wide angle too. It can make for great effects, as long as you
Yeah.
know it creates some effects, some distortion, some exaggeration in
I
body
think
shape and so on.
the distortion, if you do it carefully, you can actually get away with it. The wide angle lens actually shows another sort of dramatic sort of effect that few photographers use. So every time you see, most of them is the 50 mm, 80, or the what is it, 70 to 200, 100 mm. If you do it at a wide angle, you do it at the 11 mm, you find you get a different effect, you see, and that can be quite dramatic, you know. You get an angle that nobody really gets. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to then move over to the subject of light.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot make a photo without good light. And I mean, we could speak for hours about lighting for portraits. I just want to give a little set of tips in the interest of saving time here. So some rules, if you want, or tips, recommendations, suggestions, guidelines, more than rules. First of all, the best light for portraits is soft light, which means not direct sunlight, which direct sunlight creates harsh shadows on the face. Especially if the sun is high in the sky at high noon, it will create shadows under the eyes. In the eye sockets will be black. The nose will throw shadows across the face and so on. If the light is soft, you don't get those problems. How do you get soft light even outside at noon? You find areas that are in the shade but that are otherwise well lit, like near a wall facing away from the sun. Like you're near a house, you find a wall that is facing north, in the northern hemisphere, it will be in the shade, that is called the open shade. Of course, in the southern hemisphere, it will be the south-facing wall. And but still, that area will receive a lot of light from neighboring walls, other houses, the ground, and the sky itself. But it's not direct, so it is a light that is reflected off a diffusive surface like a painted wall will be soft. It will not create those harsh shadows. Or in an overcast day, it's perfect. The cloud cover will be that giant softbox in the sky. If you're in the dark, look for natural reflectors like white walls. Let's say you don't want, you're out in the sun, never have your subject face strong sunlight. One, they will have harsh shadows on their face. Two, they will squint. Turn them away from the sun. But if you turn them opposite the sun, typically the face will be very dark and it will be hard to expose. What can you do? You can use a reflector. You can use a handheld reflector like a little white cloth, or use naturally occurring reflectors like a wall. A white wall is better because if you use a colored wall, then the light will take whatever color the wall is and it will illuminate the subject with that color. Sometimes if the sunlight is not too harsh, like at sunset or sunrise, you can have your subject face the sun because the light will be softer and your subject will not squint, will be able to look straight into the sun. So here I've got some examples of portraits that could have been better, but they weren't. Lovely couple, daughter and father here. They were at noon under the sun. I couldn't find an area to put them, to move them. So it's a pretty portrait, but you see how dark the eye sockets are, and you see the shadows under their eyes. So, and there is no light in the eyes basically. So that's why it's not a portfolio portrait. Two examples side by side. Under the harsh sunlight of the day, she's squinting, and her nose is throwing a shadow across her face. 20 seconds later, I just asked her to move a few feet to her side, In the shade, much better looking portrait, soft light, no harsh shadows. She is able to keep her eyes open. There is a hint of a catchlight in her eyes, much better portrait. Or this one, you can see it was really late in the afternoon, almost sunset, as you can see from the shadows in the back, with long shadows thrown, and she's looking straight into the sun, but it creates no problem because at that hour of the day the light is much softer and not so hard. Another thing about light, catch lights. What are catch lights? I already mentioned them earlier, but those little bits of light in a person's eyes, which people who do cinema or TV, they always try to have catch lights in the subjects, in the actor's eyes, because they bring life into those eyes. They make them much more lively. So, of course, the cinema people, filmmakers, they have they use lots of lights to create catch lights that look natural. You cannot go around with a portable TV studio. Sometimes you have to do with what you have. So how do you get catch lights? Like in this case here with natural light, or in this case here, two great photos by Robin. And well, simply one simple technique is that if your subject is inside a room, but the room has an opening like a window or a doorway, and it's a bright day outside, you just ask them to turn their face toward the light source, toward the opening, and that will naturally create a catchlight in the eyes. Even if they're not looking straight into that opening, still, if the general direction is that, it will create a catchlight. And you need to learn to search for the catchlight in the eye. If you don't see it through your viewfinder, ask your subject, or directly by looking them into the eyes, ask them to turn a little bit around until you see it, or you might have a lamp or an artificial light, whatever, that creates that. You can also create that with a reflector, like a silver reflector. You can put the reflector just outside the frame. Better if you put the reflector high above the subject's face, the subject's head, and not below, because if the catchlight is at the top of the pupil, it will look more natural, because we tend to perceive as natural light that is reflecting coming from above like the sun. If you put the reflector under the face, the catchlight will be in the bottom part of the eye, and it will not look as natural as it is here. Just want to take some time and ask Robin about his famous black background technique, which is he uses to great effect in this photo and others, because it's something that people in a studio with artificial light and a seamless black background, they take great pains to create this effect. Or many people use a lot of Photoshop to create this, but Robin is creating this all with natural light and almost no Photoshop. Can you explain a little bit about your technique here?
This one is very easy. Okay, so you basically have to look for a place, usually which is dark and has a doorway so that there's light coming in. So maybe good places are like a window, where they stand inside and the behind is mostly dark and black, or at the entrance of a tunnel. So basically, and you have to look at the timing as well. So like in Venice, there's this tunnel, which is basically a small tunnel, enough to fit basically one or two models. And if you stand there, I think from anywhere from about 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. until 3 p.m., the light basically hits the model, and you get a catch light, and it just hits the model directly, and basically behind comes out completely black in color. You don't even have to use a flash or a reflector. So basically, you're looking out for places like that, and you just focus on the model, and you get it. Of course, in Ethiopia, I've done it. Sometimes there's huts. You just get them to stand in front of the huts, and and time of the lighting is good, you just get these sort of things. Yeah. So, but basically, I've done a little bit of research. Usually, the best timing I can tell you is anywhere from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Anything before and after that, it's not good. That sort of thing. What else? I suppose the other alternative things you can do is you can put a piece of black cloth behind and then just shoot. Uh, and then use a little bit of Photoshop to darken everything. But you know, in certain places like Venice, you find that it's quite impossible to get an assistant or two to hold up your black cloth for you, and a lot of people pass by. You know, even in this tunnel, a lot of people pass by all the time. So basically, we're waiting there, and when there's nobody, you know, the model and I will quickly come up, quick, you know. Basically, we have about 10 seconds, and we get that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's
Okay,
the
good.
secret of
Yeah, and even a black cloth is
background.
something
Yeah.
more that you have to carry when you travel, and if it's under the sun, it will not look black anyway. So this is great. So back to the question that Greg was asking, I think was Greg about flash or not? The dreaded flash question. First, a little saying that I don't know who was the first to say this, but is light illuminates, shadows define. So when you look at a photograph, or when you look at a real person, you are seeing your two eyes, you have binocular vision. And so that the stereo vision allows our brain to reconstruct the 3D shape of the subject. When you are looking at a photograph that is a flat surface, you don't have binocular vision, you don't have stereo clues to that. The only way you can reconstruct, well, one of the ways, the best way that our brain has to reconstruct depth is through the interplay of light and shadow. So in this case here was a little boy in Cuba, and he was inside a building, and he had light coming from his side, from the right of the photo, and the left side of his face is brighter than the right side. And so this gives his face a nice 3D look. You can have that with natural light, you can have that with artificial light. Now, what is the problem? Is that if you, and this photo was not taken with the flash, I just added it there because it was nice. If you use the pop-up flash, the little thing that is on top of your camera that pops up when you want to shoot with flash, or even a speed light that you mount on a hot shoe, and as long as the light is on axis with the lens, it will throw light straight on, and it will obliterate all the shadows, and your subject will look very flat. So portraits taken that way almost never look good because the light is flat. If it's dark, then the people's pupils will be wide open, and you should flash light into their eyes, and it will illuminate the retina behind, and you get the red eye effect. People might be annoyed by it, especially if it's in the dark. If it's very bright outside, you can use pop-up flash as fill at low power to fill in a little bit of the shadows, especially if you're facing away from the sun. And the pupils will be small, so they will not see a lot of light. It will not be annoying. But generally, pop-up flash is best never used. So we have created a few rules about flash use. So when it is okay and when it is not okay to use flash. The first rule is a bit counterintuitive. And you would normally use flash when it is dark outside because you need more light. My personal first rule of flash use is do not use flash to make light when it's dark, because it will rarely look good. When it's dark, you have other ways to make light. First thing is that you have to consider, especially if you use a modern camera. Modern cameras have amazingly good high ISO performance. You should not worry about bumping up your ISO to 1600, 3200, or even more. What if the image is a bit grainy and noisy? It's fine. People almost never care about that. Only us photographers care about digital noise. And nowadays we have image stabilized lenses and cameras, so you can use longer shutter speeds without getting blurry pictures. So Bump up your ISO, slow down your shutter speed, and use natural light if you must, if you can. Rule number 2 of flash use: do not put your camera in the green mode. You know, those cameras have those mode dials with PS, AM, sports mode, night mode, and then some of them have the green setting, which means the camera goes completely auto, which means the camera decides when to pop up the flash. And the camera decides to pop up the flash whenever it's dark. So if it's dark and you are in the green mode, you will get the pop-up flash, which will go against our first rule, that is, do not use flash when it's dark and do not use pop-up flash. Rule number 3, always ask for your subject's permission. They might get annoyed by this, so it's always better to ask in advance and tell them that if it's used properly, it will not be annoying, but it's better if they know about that. Something that you can do very simply without any special equipment or any special setting is to use bounce flash. Bounce flash is when you don't direct the light of the flash straight into the subject. Even if you have the flash on top of your camera, most modern speedlights, not the little pop-up ones, the one that you mount, have what is called a tilt and swivel head. So the head can be turned like 100 degrees in both directions around and tilted up and down. That means that you have, if you have walls, and better if they are white, you have white walls behind your back or a white ceiling, you can bounce the flash off of those. So if you have a wall facing to your right and you turn the flash head towards the wall, that will have the effect of creating soft, because it's diffused by the wall, and directional light, because it's coming from the side. So it will create light and shadows. It will not be head-on. So this is recommended. You can also use flash to great effect with color gels and other things to do things like, again, we do a little bit of that in Venice, and we create a bit of surreal, magical photos that you cannot get without flash. But it is a bit of a special occasion. Okay, that's about light. We still have a few minutes. Composition, which again mostly means what to avoid. You're taking photos of people on the street. You have to act quickly. Sometimes you don't think. You have tunnel vision. You only see your subject and you do not see what's at the edges of the frame. So recommendation number 1, always look at the edges of the frame for things like objects that intrude into the edges of the frame that might be distracting. Watch out for, mind the background. In this example here, could have been a nice portrait if I had paid attention to the background, where there is a little kid there, which is blurry because I was using a large aperture, but not as blurry. I mean, I find it personally distracting. So this is not a successful photograph. Watch out for things like poles, antennas, and trees sticking out of a person's head. They never look good. Avoid tangents where lines touch the edges of the frame or edges of other lines. If you have subjects on 2 different planes, for instance, aim for separation between the 2 subjects, or a subject and an object in the background or foreground. So there is some separation on the horizontal plane, because that looks better. They are not overlapping. They are not overlapping generally. And do not crop joints. Do not put things like ankles, elbows, knees, hands, wrists, necks, especially necks, at the edge of frames, or where the subject is partially hidden by something. If you need to crop subject, their arms, crop between the wrist and the elbow, crop the legs on the thigh, above the knee, or below the knee, but not at the knee. For whatever reason, our mind doesn't like that. So yeah, these are some recommendations. Another thing I want to say about composition is, do we go, and this harkens back to the discussion we were having in the chat about the use of the lens. So different focal lengths make for different types of portraits. You can go from a contextual portrait, where you're showing a lot of what is around the subject, and the context can help tell a story as long as the context is representative of the place. I mean, shooting somebody in a McDonald's maybe is not that representative because McDonald's are pretty much the same everywhere. Maybe somebody with a traditional Ethiopian tribes people dress in a McDonald's might be curious, but it's not really what we're after here. So the context needs to tell a story. Don't just, my recommendation here is what I define, think like a magazine editor. If you do a travel reportage and you want to submit to a magazine for publication, normally the editor will want to see a series of shots that start maybe with what is called an establishing shot, where you show out of context, and then you get closer. And at the end, you might get a very close-up shot. It's difficult to do a really close-up portrait as a travel portrait, because remember, we want the travel portrait to be characteristic of the culture or of the land. If you're only showing some people's face, it's hard to show something that is characteristic, unless maybe that face is characteristically painted, or they have tribal tattoos or something like that. I'm just going here to show some examples. Again, some photos by Robin here. This is taken in Bhutan, right, Robin?
Yes.
Nice couple
Bhutan,
in there.
Yeah. County. Yep, Bhutan.
This is what might be defined. This is in Bali.
Mm-hmm.
Robin?
Yes, Bali. Yes, using a wide angle lens. Yeah.
So this is can be an establishing shot. This is a painter that is painting a portrait, and we see his studio, the tools of his trade, and a little bit of the architecture of the studio. And then we might get the same painter in more of a closer shot when he's painting with some kids. Or another example here, an establishing shot. It's clear here the context is the what's that called? What's that place called, Robin? In China?
Guilin, China. Yes.
Yeah, fishermen that use the cormorants to capture fish, and you see much of the context, the mountains around it, and then you got in closer here. You don't you don't see the mountains anymore, but if you know how those people are typically dressed, you can recognize the place, and you can get even closer. And another situation where here it's a very close-up portrait. Sometimes you don't need to show the entirety of the face, but here what we're seeing here is enough to. I think this is. Can you tell what's the situation here, or who is this person?
This one is in Singapore actually. Backstage at one of those very rare Chinese street opera performances. So this is where it's taken at the backstage. Yes, and then basically I'm just practicing doing the mirror reflection shots that is so very popular in Venice, but this one is in Singapore. So I was thinking, when they're doing the makeups, they have their mirror, and with the very dark lighting inside with occasional light bulbs here and there, it actually makes for quite a nice portrait.
Yep. So again, this is a close-up shot that is still revealing of the place and the situation here. Another thing that can make a portrait is gesture. If you can get a gesture, it's better. Many times it's better than just having somebody standing up there. Something funny or poignant. A gesture can be spontaneous, like we had those Thai girls making their V sign. Or we can request a gesture to people are. It's fine. Most of the time, it's fine if people. If you see somebody performing a gesture that you think is interesting, but you didn't have the camera up to your eye, you were not quick enough. I mean, in most cases, it's okay to ask them to repeat it for the camera. There's nothing wrong with that. Or it can be more arranged and theatrical. So just a few examples here. This was very spontaneous. I don't even remember what this guy in London was telling me. Maybe, what are you doing? Are you taking my photograph? Or something like that. guy here in Bali was just, I think Robin, he was doing it for the camera, but it's still, I think it's still looking great. Was something that was completely arranged. We asked this lady in Venice to pretend it was raining. It was not raining. We was just pretending the clothes hanging from the line were dripping, and she was checking if it was raining. It was just a fun idea we had to create this gesture here. So, okay, one last topic about that I anticipated at the beginning, about the use of the photos we take of those people. So, first of all, keep in mind that for the portraits we were talking about today, we always ask permission, either verbally or not, but there is always a permission in this. My personal position on this is that if somebody gives me their permission to take the photo, they're implicitly giving me the permission to use the photo, to publish it. So, and it is generally, depends on country, depends on the situation, it's generally okay to use a photo of somebody for editorial purposes. What is editorial? An editorial image is an image that can be used to illustrate current events or subjects of human interest, including arts, business, culture, health, fitness, lifestyle, social events, technology, and travel. So the travel photos that we take, we want them to be illustrative of those topics. So if we publish them, if we sell them to a magazine and wants to make a story about Balinese culture, then it would be okay to use a photo that we took there, even if we don't have a model release. And I personally never carry with me model releases. Just thinking that I might use that photo commercially. I don't know about you. I don't think, Robin, you ever carry model releases.
No, but
It's just
yeah. But the thing is that it's me. The thing
Mhm.
is that for most of the time in Venice, it's the models that request for the photos, and the same thing for the Michaels. You know, so I think the situation is a little bit different for other people. Otherwise, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean is that if it's arranged, there might be
Mm.
time
I mean,
and expectation
there was
for a
one
model
time
release.
when one of the photographers asked me, "Do you sell your Venice photos?" I said, "Not yet." And then they said, "Will the models get angry if you sell?" I said, "Well, my models are hoping that I will sell them, but I'm not sure if any other photographer do that. They will be happy or not. You see, I know some models got upset because a certain photographer started selling her photos. I mean, I don't know what's the reason behind it, but those photos weren't very good anyway, so maybe that's why the model was upset, but that's another story altogether. Yeah. So,
So, of course, for commercial use means that a photo is used to make money in a way.
mhm.
So you're not making money through the photo. It's okay to
No.
sell a photo that doesn't have a model release as long as it's used for editorial purposes. But if the photo is sold and used to make money, like in advertisement or to put on a corporate website, then you need a model release. Uh, I don't carry them, so I cannot use those. None of the portraits, those that are my portrait that you've seen here, come with a model release, so I'm not able to use them for commercial. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with not making money with those. I could make money in advertising with that, but I'm not doing that. Just keep in mind, we're not lawyers, nothing of what we say here constitutes legal advice. Just little disclaimer here. If you're in doubt, ask a lawyer before risking a lawsuit. We're not lawyers. So, yep, that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about. If you still have a few questions, you can ask them in the chat. Otherwise, we will be happy to reply via email our websites were listed at the, maybe for people who join later, I'm just going to show the slide with our website addresses where you can find the contact information and contact us to ask more questions. We'll be happy to answer. And before thanking you for attending, just a little pitch for our Venice workshop that we're going to hold for the Venice Carnival at the beginning of February of 2018. We still have spots left. We will do portraiture, and we will do cityscape. We will go to find the Venice off the beaten track, some of secret locations that we know after having been there so many years. So we'll do a little bit of both. It's going to be lots of fun, and we would love to have you there. Sorry, we're not doing any Black Friday discounts. I don't believe in Black Friday discounts. I don't think they're serious. But yep. So thanks again for the Americans there. Happy Thanksgiving. I know we'll probably do this again in December. If you have some American friends, I know many of them were probably traveling today to go to their families for Thanksgiving. So probably we have lots of Europeans and Australians and Asians here. We'll get some more Americans next time. If you have American friends, you want to tell them about this, if you like this, just let us know. When you leave the session here, I think we will be redirected to our thank you page. There is a little survey form. If you just want to leave us a little feedback, it will only take you a few seconds of your time. And for the ebook that we promised, it will arrive. We have your email address. You will get the ebook, a link to download the ebook in a few days via email. So, yep, that's all. Thank you again for attending. Thank you, Robin, for your time. I know it was really early for you, so that's very much appreciated. So, bye, everyone, and take care.